Here's what all of you in West Virginia need to know. When you hear Pete Buttigieg on television talking about the Green New Deal and the battery-powered car and how we're going to transition away from coal and fossil fuels thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, the Inflation Reduction Act was authored by your Joe Manchin. Your Joe Manchin is the man who did this, and Joe Manchin has a habit. It is to be a liberal Democrat for 3 to 4 years of his 6-year Senate term and then suddenly morph into a conservative, hoping you forget the first 3 to 4 years. He helped Joe Biden, but for Joe Manchin, the Inflation Reduction Act would never have passed. But for Joe Manchin, you would not have this Green New Deal. But for Joe Manchin, you in West Virginia would not be on the verge of being out of a job because of this legislation. The legislation was passed because of Joe Manchin. And now Joe Manchin is like, what, me? Who, me? What wasn't my fault? How can you blame me? The Wall Street Journal has this obsession with allowing Joe Manchin to rehabilitate himself. They have yet again decided to give oral pleasure to Joe Manchin and put him in the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, yet again saying, I can't believe they're doing exactly what I let them do. Here's his headline, Biden's Inflation Reduction Act betrayal. Instead of implementing the law as intended, his administration subverts it for ideological ends. You will notice Joe Manchin is not filing a lawsuit. When President Biden and I spoke before Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act last summer, we agreed the bill was designed to pay down our national debt and shore up American national security. It was designed to generate $738 billion in new revenue, with more than $238 billion dedicated to debt reduction, the first serious piece of legislation in more than 2 decades that the Congressional Budget Office estimated would have done that. Yet, instead of implementing the law as intended, unelected ideologues, bureaucrats, and appointees seem determined to violate and subvert the law to advance a partisan agenda that ignores both energy and fiscal security. Specifically, they are ignoring the law's intent to support and expand fossil energy and are redefining domestic energy to increase clean energy spending to potentially deficit-breaking levels. The administration is attempting at every turn to implement the bill it wanted, not the bill Congress actually passed. Ignoring the debt and deficit implications of these actions at this time nears to raise the debt ceiling isn't only wrong, it's policy and political malpractice. I believe the only person who can rein in this in is Joe Biden. You know, Joe Manchin knew this was going to happen. Joe Manchin's not a dumb man. Joe Manchin's not dumb in any way, shape, or form. He's playing a game. And this is why so many Americans are cynical about politics in America today, that Joe Manchin thinks he can get away with this, and his friends at the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal are allowing him to do this. The Wall Street Journal editorial page did not have to give Joe Manchin a platform to do his, oh, shucks, I didn't think they would do what they said they wanted to do when I wrote the law. I'll be doggone. They didn't have to give him that platform. They did not have to allow Joe Manchin to say, I didn't know they were going to do what they have said for years they wanted to do. If you will recall, it was Joe Biden who said when he became president that they would end fossil fuels. And Joe Manchin is now suddenly, oh, shucks, I didn't know he was serious. Really? You had no idea that Joe Biden was going to do that, really? You had no idea that Joe Biden would do exactly what he said he was going to do? Seriously? This is a video I put together last year on this topic before this legislation was passed.
My administration has not stopped or slowed U.S. oil production.
Number one.
no more subsidies for fossil fuel industry, no more drilling on federal lands, no more drilling, including offshore, no ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends.
That's what he said. That's what he said. If you want a larger montage of this, put together, listen to this.
Number one, no more subsidies for fossil fuel industry, no more drilling on federal lands, no more drilling, including offshore, no ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends.
Vice President Biden, I'd like to ask you, 3 consecutive American presidents have enjoyed stints of explosive economic growth due to a boom in oil and natural gas production. As president, would you be willing to sacrifice some of that growth, even knowing potentially that it could displace thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of blue-collar workers in the interest of transitioning to that greener economy?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, because the opportunity for those workers to transition to high-paying jobs, as Tom said, is real. We're the only country in the world that's ever taken great crises and turned them into enormous opportunities.
Right. You got that? This is Joe Biden on the campaign stage running for president of the United States saying that, yes, I'm willing to kill these people's jobs and force them into what he believed were higher paying jobs, learning how to operate battery powered cars. Joe Biden said this, and you got Joe Manchin of West Virginia. He's like, I didn't believe he was serious. He campaigned on this, for Pete's sakes. It is appalling to me. Appalling that the one leading conservative editorial page in America would allow Joe Manchin to say, my bad, I'm sorry I believed him. My bad, the legislation wasn't written in my thinking for them to be able to do this, and yet they're doing it. If they're doing what the legislation says don't do, file suit, Joe Manchin. File a lawsuit. Get Donald Trump appointed federal judges to stop them, except you're not doing that because what you're doing is playing a game. You're fine with them doing this. You are okay with them doing this. You allowed them to do this. You're trying to have it both ways, Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is the guy but for whom this legislation would not exist. Joe Manchin is the man who said he would never, ever, ever let them do this sort of thing. And then, surprise, he decided to let them do it. He drafted the legislation. He made sure the legislation was written the way he wanted it done. And now he's saying, I am shocked and appalled. They are doing what the legislation allows them to do. They said they wouldn't do it. Why do we keep letting people like this get a pass? Now, I warned some of you last year when the Green New Deal and Build Back Better was killed. Some of you were like, well, I can't believe Joe Manchin's not becoming a Republican. Why is it we should call for him to be a Republican? I said, no. Joe Manchin plays this game. This is the game Joe Manchin has always played. Joe Manchin is a liberal, and it benefits Joe Manchin when liberals attack him in West Virginia because he's a liberal, and he needs the people of West Virginia to forget about that. But Joe Manchin will betray us, and he did. And now he's upset about it because he allowed the Democrats to do what they're doing. And Joe Manchin's problem is not that the Democrats are doing what they're doing. Joe Manchin's problem is they're doing it too efficiently. They're moving too fast. They're supposed to slow it down so that the people of West Virginia give him 6 more years in the Senate before they're out of jobs. And the way Joe Biden and the Democrats are moving right now, these people are going to be out of work before Joe Manchin gets his name on the ballot for this upcoming election in 2024. Joe Manchin does not care about the people of West Virginia. I mean, my God, everything there is named after Robert Byrd anyway. There's nothing to name for Joe Manchin, so he stays in Washington, D.C. on his houseboat. Joe Manchin is more concerned with his daughter's job and his son's job with natural gas supplies than he is the people of West Virginia. He's perfectly fine with the people of West Virginia being unemployed because of this law. He just was hoping they would slow down and not throw him out of work until after he won re-election so that then he can get giant government packages to bail him out again. We should stop dealing with these politicians and their all shucks moments of, I'm so surprised they're doing what I let them do. To the fact that the Wall Street Journal would humor Joe Manchin in this, It shows the Wall Street Journal is willing to shape politics and perhaps doesn't like the conservatives in West Virginia who could beat Joe Manchin, allowing him some sort of reason to make an excuse for what he's doing. We see this game over and over, and Republicans do it too. If we're honest, Republicans do this as well. I mean, Republicans have for years campaigned on defunding Planned Parenthood, and they have funded it and funded it and funded it and funded it. And then they're like, I can't believe Planned Parenthood got federal dollars that we gave them. How dare us give them that? I can't believe I voted for it. I'm shocked and appalled to find the Republicans voted for it that you knew. You didn't want to fight. Republicans do it too. And if we call out the Republicans, we should call out the Democrats. The problem is the Wall Street Journal editorial board. They're letting Joe Manchin do something like this. You know it's going to be in a mail piece or a fundraiser for Joe Manchin in West Virginia. He's going to burnish his conservative credentials. I'm fighting the man. I'm fighting Joe Biden. With what? What are you fighting him with, Joe? You gave him the ability to do this, Joe. You gave Biden the ability to do this. You are the one who drafted the legislation, and you should own it. If this was a credible piece, Joe Manchin would be apologizing for doing this and saying he's never going to help the Democrats do this again, and he's going to boycott every single one of Joe Biden's nominees. Why is it Joe Manchin blocking all of Joe Biden's nominees? Why is Joe Manchin voting for the judges? Why is Joe Manchin voting for the nominees for the executive branch? Why is Joe Manchin continuing to humor Joe Biden at all? Say enough is enough. I'm never voting for anything Joe Biden wants again until he stops what he's doing. But he's not doing that. He's not doing that. He said, I can't believe they're doing this legislation that I told them they couldn't do it. And we put it into law. And now they're doing what the law says. Shut up, Joe Manchin. And shame on the Wall Street Journal editorial board for giving him a platform to bellyache about something he wanted done. And now is just horrified that they're doing too quickly.